It is my pleasure to invite His Excellency Ambassador Peter Thomson to address you. Ambassador.
Thank you for those kind words. And thanks for moving. I think my bald head would have dazzled the occasion had we stayed in the sun. Your Serene Highness, Secretary General and Director General, and Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, great pleasure to be back here in Monaco today. A sensation that is tempered by the reality of a world in which wide swathes are still ravaged by the COVID-19 pandemic. We're all connected, a lesson crystallized, in fact, by the pandemic. Thus, our thoughts and indeed our vaccine resources must be with those who are at the front lines of combating COVID-19. In thinking about the pandemic's front lines, how often over the last year one has had good cause to recall the conclusion of Albert Camus' La Peste, when he wrote that what we learn in a time of pestilence is that there are more things to admire in men than to despise. Please forgive the somber tone of my opening words, but I feel it's my duty to repeat the remarks of the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, who announced at the Blue COP in Madrid that we are willfully destroying the life support systems of this planet. And in a more recent speech on the state of the planet at Columbia University in New York, said that humanity has been at war with nature and that it's time for us to make peace. I bend our thoughts now to the ocean with my oft-repeated mantra of no healthy planet without a healthy ocean, and the ocean's health is currently in decline. Ladies and gentlemen, to illustrate that decline, I point to the wonder of coral, and in doing so, bow to the global leadership of His Serene Highness and the Principality of Monaco, who through ICRI and other admirable initiatives are spearheading our struggle to save coral reefs. The IPCC has reported with a high degree of confidence that we will lose 70 to 90% of tropical coral reefs when global temperatures reach 1.5 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, WMO reports that we're still on track for well over 3 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. Coming from an island ringed by a mighty coral reef, I, for one, on behalf of my grandchildren, refuse that future. The security of humanity on this planet may well be existentially linked to the fate of coral. Thus, we all have work to do. Ladies and gentlemen, over the decade ahead, we have a universally agreed blueprint to work to. I refer to the Paris Climate Agreement and the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. If we implement these in full, we will indeed make peace with nature. As you well know, the 14th Sustainable Development Goal sets out to conserve and sustainably use the resources of the ocean. It would not be out of place for me to say that, like the other 16 goals, we are still behind the 8 ball when it comes to SDG 14's implementation. It has become increasingly obvious as we endeavor to introduce a truly sustainable blue economy that ocean science must be the foundation upon which the achievement of SDG 14 is built. In this regard, it's an astounding situation when you consider that the ocean contains the majority of life on this planet, covers around 70% of the planet's surface, and produces over 50% of the planet's oxygen, that the majority of the ocean's properties remain unknown to science, and around 80% of the seafloor remains unsurveyed. We expect that deficit to be overcome now that the UN Decade of Ocean Science has been launched. In the years ahead, we'll have some very important decisions to make about our relationship with this planet, and we'll need to make those decisions on the basis of the most trustworthy and comprehensive scientific findings available. Thus, given the status of the ocean and our relationship with it, full scientific knowledge of its properties is absolutely necessary. And for this reason alone, the UN Decade of Ocean Science assumes profound importance for all of us. So, ladies and gentlemen, in this context, it is in this context that I believe that the International Hydrographic Organization assumes new and heightened responsibilities. All that I have said this morning rings the bell of all hands on deck alarm to avoid planetary shipwreck. The IHO is the trusted hand supporting our navigation out on the great ocean and through the waterways upon which we travel. In the 100 years of its existence, countless lives and boundless commerce have been saved through its diligent processes, setting standards to promote uniformity in nautical charts and documents, coordinating the activities of national hydrographic offices, and providing best practice in marine surveying and the use of hydrographic information. Together with its sister organizations, the IMO, WMO, and IOC UNESCO, the International Hydrographic Organization stands as an enduring proof positive of the benefits of multilateralism and international cooperation. On behalf of the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, and the United Nations as a whole, I give thanks and congratulations to the International Hydrographic Organization for 100 years of tireless pursuit of its mandate on behalf of the best interests of people and planet. It's not meant as a play on words when I say the IHO underlies all our ocean work, but it is the seafloor, the depths of channels, and the existence of hazardous reefs, the extent of what, but is all that just the extent of what IHO can bring to the avoidance of a planetary shipwreck? I think not. Through and over those channels and reefs run currents and tides, and the wondrous ecology of the seafloor is inextricably tied to the water column it supports. Think for a moment of a bottom-dwelling shrimp. It and its ecological surrounds recognize no legal distinction between the seafloor and the water column it supports, but jump a couple of inches and the shrimp moves from one human legal regime into another. When we call for an end to siloed thinking, let's mean what we say. Between SDG 14.A's agreed target of increasing scientific knowledge, developing research capacity, and transferring marine technology, and the UN Decade of Ocean Science's aim of giving us the science we need for the ocean we want, there is much that IHO can do to contribute to our great task of reversing the decline in which the ocean's health has been caught. Your Serene Highness, Secretary General and Director General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I hope my words today have stimulated some thought about IHO's integral place in resetting humankind's relationship with the ocean, with the principle of sustainability always as our lodestar, and the UN Decade of Ocean Science as the flag bearer of SDG 14.A's target of increasing scientific knowledge to improve the ocean's health. I urge IHO onwards. Hydrography, in its broadest sense, has the potential to measure and monitor ocean data on the vast global scale required, and to provide this data to scientists to interpret under the decade's UN-designated leadership of IOC UNESCO. We are challenged by ocean acidification, deoxygenation, warming, sea level rise, and chemical and plastic pollution, to mention just a few of the ocean's travails. So I appeal to the hydrographers of the world to play their full part in monitoring what are fundamental elements of the ocean's health and our own. In a year's time, we will gather at the UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon, co-hosted by the governments of Portugal and Kenya, to consider how we are faring with the implementation of SDG 14. I was in Lisbon last week, meeting with the Portuguese authorities to discuss preparations for the conference, and as a result, I am convinced that, like the first UN Ocean Conference, the Lisbon Conference will create a bright new chapter of action to restore and protect the ocean's well-being. I hope to see hydrography prominent in the mix of innovations and solutions forthcoming from next year's UN Ocean Conference in order to give us the data we require for the science we need for the ocean we want. And I thank you for your kind attention to my words.